When AI reshapes the nature of work, who do we become? Are we trapped in the inevitable, or can we define our paths? Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Laid Off Legends podcast, where resilience meets reinvention. My name's Leo, a product builder and storyteller, learning and turning my layoff into a different path. With each pod, I sit down with legends, rewriting what's next, along with the experts helping them navigate through it. Today, we're talking about identity for anyone who feels the ground shifting under their career right now because of AI. I'm joined by three incredible leaders I deeply admire, sitting in very different seats watching this play out. Taurean Jones, a design executive who spent 2 decades building AI native products at great companies like Intuit, Google Cloud, and Microsoft. Taurean, welcome. Sarah Bernstein, a HR executive who has led workforce transformation inside some of the largest tech companies in the world like PayPal, ServiceNow, Airbnb, and Lumen. Sarah, welcome back.
Thank you.
And Orville McDonald, a product executive who spent 2 decades building AI and ad products at Microsoft, Google, and Mozilla, and is now building Musera, an AI native platform that turns investment ideas into analyst-grade research. I am deeply excited about the intersection of disciplines here. We have so much to cover, and we're doing this in a series. So everyone, get ready. As always, a friendly reminder that the opinions of the speakers shared on the pod are not official representations of the companies they work for. 3 leaders, 2 episodes, and 1 question. When AI reshapes the nature of work, who do we become? Let's get into it. Guys, how are you feeling? Welcome to the podcast.
Hey,
Thank you,
thank you for
Leo.
having us.
Thank you for having me.
It's so great to have you guys. And I love the expertise here and the aggregation of disciplines. And so why don't we just start there? We're talking about individuals and functional identity, what's happened to people based on how AI is reshaping us all. I would love to open it up to Orville in terms of just your general perspectives on what's going on in the industry right now.
I would say this is an absolutely exciting time. I'm a big fan of AI, having worked in the space for quite a while now. I'd say the most interesting challenge that I find is that when the ground is changing and everything is being reinvented, do you stick with the status quo or do you move to the other thing that's kind of coming over the horizon? And when people think about risks, I probably have a different perspective than most. Most people think change is the riskiest thing, but when the world is changing around you, the riskiest thing you could do is just sit still. So I think we're going to have a great conversation discussing this stuff.
I really appreciate that perspective to kick us off. Sarah, what do you think? Your journey has gone across some of the largest companies in the world, and there's lots to unpack from HR. What are you seeing right now?
From where I sit, it is definitely an exciting and very fast time. The fastest I've ever seen a company move is my time when I was at Palo Alto Networks, and I would say that this exceeds that speed. So I like to say that with AI, it's like the sand is kind of shifting under your feet every 3 weeks. And what we're really seeing in this shift is a democratization of expertise and a real collapse between knowing and building. We've always defined ourselves as experts and then translated that expertise into outcomes and taken our expertise as our insight. That's all being compressed with AI. So value is really shifting in a cross-functional productization and really creating a speed of learning and a speed of expertise that didn't exist before. I think it's exciting, and like Orville, I think it's the time to jump all in with building and curiosity and creation. And so if you can harness that excitement, I think you're going to fare well in this new AI era.
Torian, I would love your perspective. As a designer, there is so much there. Design gets involved not just at the beginning, middle, but also at the end as well. Would love your initial thoughts before we jump in.
Yeah, I would say that design is an interesting place. We spent 20 years fighting for our place at the table. And I would say that those execution boundaries have significantly dropped, and design is more equipped now than ever to own the entire end-to-end software development lifecycle. They can draft product requirements documents, they can create proof of concepts, they can even vibe code solutions as an implementation with engineering. So the breadth of what they can do and the product development lifecycle is huge. I might make some people upset. I feel like design is probably some of the most powerful people in a product development life. No disrespect, Orville, okay? I'm just letting you know. But the capabilities have dramatically expanded. But I also would say that there's more pressure. With more power comes more responsibility. And so I think there's more pressure for design to own more. And it's probably a lot of anxiety, which I've seen when your peers and your partners are also doing the same things you can. I've been in meetings where engineers and product managers have shown up with vibe coded prototypes. And that's a little probably disconcerting for, designers is finding, what is my role? What am I supposed to be doing here? So my challenge has always been to the design discipline is don't fall in love with the artifact, fall in love with the outcome. For what you can deliver now is more than ever. And I just want them to embrace this new era and the new possibilities there are.
That's a powerful start to our conversation because you mentioned it, the central point. If what you do isn't needed or anyone else can do what you do, how does that make folks feel when they're in the room? Because it doesn't feel like they're needed anymore. And does it mean that there's more they need to learn? Does it mean they retreat and go do something else? Orville, I'll position that to you. You started this with excitement. This is a great place, but it feels scary if I'm not needed in the room anymore. And at some point, we've seen thousands of layoffs over the last 12 to 24 months. Curious, how should folks start to think about this? Because you position this as an exciting time.
I'd say that the notion around identity is kind of an interesting one. Like I was thinking about this kind of coming into this podcast where very early in our careers, our identities are tied to an institution. So it's what university did you go to? Where did you work? We have long careers at Microsoft. So many of us had that Microsoft identity that carried with us, even as we went to other companies as well. And the thing that I think with this particular era, and I think it goes to the heart of what Taurean was just talking about, is that your identity should start morphing from the institutions or the roles that you have to kind of what makes you unique personally. Because if I think about a lot of the conversation around AI and how it's impacting work, there's mixed messages. So on one hand, there's the classic three-way standoff on like, who's most important in the AI era? Is it design? Is it product? Or is it engineering? And I would actually argue that it's always been the individual who understood all three. You might be pointy in one, but it's the understanding of that balance is what created the great products at the end of the day. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is then this notion of, well, everyone should be a generalist. In a world where everybody could produce artifacts fairly quickly, deep expertise actually becomes the most important thing. So when you start looking at this intersection of, hey, you're good at these three or multiple disciplines, but you're pointy in one, you're both generalists, but also have deep domain expertise, then everyone's identity becomes a personal identity. And with the four of us, we may have overlapping skills in different areas, but there's something we're very pointy on. So for us older people, sometimes we look at the term like personal branding and think of it as lacking of substance and you're just trying to get your name out there. But if you think of it a different way, it's really about you are unique in a particular way. And that now needs to become your identity moving forward, irrespective of what your role is. Even within my own career, I've done everything from I was a software developer at one point, I was a product manager, I was a chief of staff, I was a technical advisor, I ran a multidisciplinary team, and now I'm a founder. So I can't tie my identity to any one of those aspects. It's that collection of experiences that makes Orville Orville. And I think that's how we'll have to start thinking about identity as we move forward.
To your point, we have actually found our pride in this is where I went to college or this is where I work. There's a status that comes with that. But when that can change overnight, it's a terrifying thing. Sarah, over to you. If we zoom out from design, product, or engineering, finance, accounting, HR, there's no role at this point that is unaffected by the capabilities that AI is bringing into our industries. How are folks thinking about this that you have observed in their various careers or disciplines?
I'll touch on three things. First of all, everybody thinks about their identity. Many people are thinking about their identity from the time they're 7 until, God willing, you're past your 70s. Identity is something that shifts. But what Orville locked into is your identity is often tied to your affiliation, or has been at least at work. You become, I am an architect at Microsoft, and that becomes a part of your identity. And that really defines your expertise. I think the tension that Orville mentioned between is it really eng that's up front, or design that's up front, or product that's up front in this is actually merging. And so it is, though, about what Taurean mentioned, which at the end of the day, nothing changes that you need to create a product that is well productized, well thought through, that truly has the beautiful design understanding of what's the human element that the customer requires that comes through in the product. And whether you're in finance and you're serving the business or serving customers and what will be most advantageous for them at a cost perspective, what is happening at a work level is that work is shifting. And every function, there will be an alt left in terms of what work you're doing. But really staying safe in that moonbeam sand is about not getting tied to the identity that you've had up to this time and becoming very clear on how you bring forward the right thing for the customer, how you think through the productization of an idea all the way to its release, and really use your subject matter expertise in harmony with other people and functions that are moving. And it is the harmony in the functions and really using the different perspectives across functions where we find the true balance. And it is the same with AI. AI should be embedded in your workflows and partnering in your workflows to get better outcomes at the end of the day for your teams, your company.
Use the word harmony and being a subject matter expert. There's a little bit of a tension there. Torian, this is to you. Designers think of themselves more or less in buckets, right? You're an interaction designer, you're a visual designer, you're a researcher. Those are collapsing completely. And the pride that people once took in their craft, because when you were a world-class visual designer, maybe you were a so-so interaction designer. If you were a world-class programmer in a particular language, maybe you were a so-so in another. Curious on this concept of subject matter expertise and harmony. How are designers feeling right now? What are you hearing from folks in the industry and this concept of flexibility with their identities?
I think it's a great question. It's definitely one where you're seeing, I think Orville touched on this generalist versus specialist spectrum. And there's anxiousness, at least in the design community, on if you're too much a specialist. And so examples, I think you pointed to a couple of them, could be if you're a visual designer, or maybe you're deep in design systems. And one day AI shows up and the expectation is you're supposed to be able to go much more broad. I think that tying to an identity, if you spent your entire career honing that skill set, I'm the best visual designer in the world, I'm the best, design system expert, and then that to be moved, I think that is super challenging. And if the business doesn't create a ramp and training programs to move you into that different discipline or broader skill set, you lose those people. I mean, you can lose those people from the company. And I think that's a loss to the company because those skill sets are super valuable, but we have not given them the ability to move in this other role. And I understand speed and we're all trying to move fast, but there's something to be said about shedding these really top talent people who are specialists and the value to the business. And so I would challenge any company or anyone who's in these roles to think about how they can move up a level in the system and take that specialist skill set and how do you scale it to be at more of a system level, because you can multiply your impact.
You mentioned an off-ramp. Do you feel that we should be waiting for the company to define that for you, or folks should take that upon themselves to really pick the direction based on all this AI influence?
I think it's both. I think the company owes it to the employees to give them a shot to transition to another role and that ramp, that onboarding or development ramp to change roles. But it's also the employee needs to have the ambition to understand, hey, the world is changing and I need to develop my skill sets. If you're a product designer, I always tell product designers, build your business acumen, okay? Where you're being expected to do more product management skill sets. If you're a product designer and you're needing to take on more front-end development, tasks through vibe coding, understand the technology, understand the baseline of the tech so you can be a better partner of engineering as well. So I think there's opportunity for you to take some ownership for your own development, but also I think that the company needs to make those roads for you as well.
In the large companies we've worked for, most often you're given your role. You're given your title, you're given your portfolio, go work on this product. What you're mentioning, Torian, is take more ownership, take more initiative of your learning. How do you do that in a large company? Because you have a task, you have a portfolio. Your job is your job. You have 40 hours a week, to work on this thing. I'll open this up to everyone. How do you, in a large company, take ownership of that when your portfolio is siloed to a particular skill set?
A couple of things is volunteering and raising your hand. There's going to be some stretch projects. You're going to have your core expertise or goals that you need to own. But there's something about raising your hand and volunteering to close the gap on some other stretch area. And how do you apply your AI skills to that? Those are probably the big things. But again, I'm very bullish on, as I've led before in my previous roles, AI enablement programs in order to up-level the entire function. There's some that you can do at a team level, but a lot of this needs to be owned by the company level. Like, how are you up-leveling design as a function? How do you up-leveling product as a function? Engineering, because you don't want to leave people behind. Give them the best shot at this, at closing this gap. I've seen a lot of success in broad enablement programs for a function and getting everybody around the technology and how to apply it.
Well, um,
So what I'm going to say might sound a bit spicy, especially with Sarah on the call, who's like from the people organization. But if you take a look at like many of the layoffs that have recently happened, there's kind of the public statement and then the reality of what was actually going on the ground. And without naming any companies, there's a few companies who disparaged the employees. They could go and made it seem like it was about performance. When in reality, if you had taken a look at some of the people who were let go, they've had great careers over like decades. So how all of a sudden they were underperforming? Or you had other companies that said, okay, one company has laid off most of the company, so we're going to follow suit and just do the same without doing an analysis of their own individual situation. So I'd say, depending on the organization to up-level the people, I don't think, at least I've seen the signs that that's kind of the right path to go down. So in that case, everybody should take it upon themselves to up-level themselves. Taurean had touched on a lot of great examples, like raising your hands and stuff like that. One thing that I've learned very early in my career, there was a period where the company I was at wasn't innovating as quickly as the rest of the industry. And I started to realize I was developing some blinders. So I made it a point that every holiday season in December, I would pick a project and use a completely different technical stack than the one that my employer had. And as a result of that, I started to learn what was best of breed outside the company. And then over time, that would compound, and then that would give me a leg up where like I start to understand things before other people really understood them. And in one role I had where we would frequently talk with external customers, they would sometimes bring up a technology that nobody else in the room would have heard of because it'd be some obscure open source project. And I'd be like, oh yeah, that's this, that, and the other. So I'd really push on people, really like take ownership of that themselves and really upskill themselves. Yes, take advantage of what your company has to offer and all that, but do not wait for that. Once again, your identity is you invest in you. And if you won't invest in yourself, then you can't expect anybody else to invest in you either. So that's my spicy take for today.
There's not a minute of spice I heard in there, first of all. Thinking about it, there was nothing hot enough for me. So one statement out front before I comment, which is I'm just going to remind you what I'm going to share is an aggregate of my views as an individual. No, in no way reflects the company that I'm currently at, but just my thought as a people leader who's led across many Fortune 5s. There's 3 elements to this answer. The first is I am a human and AI leader. And what that means is we have to be human first as we implement AI. And that's just full stop my value with AI. What that means to me is that I do think it is a company's responsibility to actually create AI journeys for people, for managers, and for leaders, because every element of those roles at companies are shifting left. And what you're required to do with AI, how you're going to manage AI, and how you're going to lead through AI is the different requirement. So I do believe in creating, if you have an ask of your employees, then you create capability. That's part one. So Taurean's ask of the company to actually create enablement across those audiences is key. It's something that at my current company we have done. We're actually on part 2, rolling out our enablement for AI. We've moved through employees first, then went to leaders, and next you'll see a release for developers. How you do that at a company should be docked in what your strategy is. It should be docked in what your culture is and what enablement is required for your adoption of AI. That's part 1. Part 2 is, and this is where, I'll harken back to a book that's called Everything I Needed to Know I Learned at Microsoft, which is we had a philosophy which all of us share that road, that you need to be developed by your organization. You need to develop yourself. And so don't get stale in developing yourself ever. Yeah, the company should help you, but you should be hungry. And especially with AI, what I would encourage you to be is curious, an always learner, understand the shift both in the marketplace and the technology. There are releases that came out this week from both OpenAI and Anthropic that I hope you're on the edge of, and that you understand for yourself what it means for your capability. That means applying that at work, understanding how it's shifting your function, which again, it's a partnership between you and your organization to understand where's the true shift in your work. Let's help people by being very clear of what's shifting in the work and what the expectation and what you need to be upskilled and what the shift is. And then lastly, always build outside your company environment. If I'm enabling a whole company with AI, I better be building downstairs with Claude and Lovable and things that are not in my stack here. Because how can I create capability, guide other people, or be, let's say, on the cutting edge in my discipline if I'm not testing and learning and actually shifting with the sands of AI? So those are the three things that I would focus on and actually taking accountability and learning with this amazing pace of change.
I love it. We're talking about identity shift here, and identity is shown in behaviors. And one of the interesting things I found is you actually have to step ahead and go experiment and go do the things. I have a question around how do organizations make it safe to do that? There's some organizations that punish mistakes. There's some organizations that it's not safe to go use a competitor's stack. Orville, I want to come back to you. You've transitioned your identity. You've moved from big company to different companies to lesser known companies, and you're now a founder. You've had to do this identity shift. How do people think about that? What tools did you use to help let go of some of the old mindsets from the larger companies? How did you unlearn some of these things and take on the new mindset that allowed you to embrace the future that you're building now?
That's a great question, because when I was doing a lot of this stuff, I have to admit, it wasn't really deliberate. So I kind of like stumbled into some of these moves as I went through it. But when I look back, a piece of advice, I really wish I could remember who told me this, because that was a great piece of advice and I love to attribute it to the individual. But they said, whenever you take a role, you should always think 2 roles ahead, with the intention of like, you're setting yourself up for the next one. So if I think about when I was getting ready to leave Google, the thoughts in my mind were like, okay, my whole career has been in these very large corporations where ownership is very diffuse. So everybody's like, hey, I own this, but you don't really own it. You're like one of 1,000 people kind of working on it. So I wanted to go somewhere, and I knew I wanted to do my own thing at some point. So I said, I want to go somewhere where I truly own the outcome. Good or bad, it's on me. I wanted the cost pressure, the P&L, truly on me. And I also wanted the multidisciplinary aspects of it truly on me. And as I went through and I talked to people about it, I was talking to the former chief product officer at Mozilla just for advice. And he was the one who said like, hey, maybe come on board. I have this opportunity for you to help build an ads business. And we did really well. We did some very challenging stuff. But, as I went through these transitions, right, the thing that I realized in hindsight is that because you're always thinking 2 steps ahead, as a result of that, you absorb the identity you're currently in, but you never get fully defined by it, because you also know that there's this other identity that's forming in the distance that you're going to get to. And it's even funny now being a founder, where if I accomplish what I want to accomplish, this will be like the last career I'll ever have. But even then, I think of it as 2 roles ahead. So right now, I'm trying to find product market fit. So my whole identity is I'm going to get punched in the face every day. I'm going to smile and I'm going to keep pushing till I find that product market fit, because the next role I want is for a young, fast growing startup. And then my hope is that when I get to that part, then my next goal is to then build a startup that's at scale. So even kind of within the same role that I'm hoping to have for the rest of my working life, I could find a second career ahead that I'm always kind of evolving to. So I think that's kind of a bit of the key to transition. And the other thing I'll add to it is one of the risks of being too tied to an identity is that you lose kind of great opportunities. So my first chief of staff role was with one of the execs within the company. And I'm embarrassed to say that when I was first asked to apply for the role, I had actually turned it down. And the reason why I turned it down was I was so tied to my engineering identity that when this individual came to talk to me, I was like, I already did this one detour into marketing. I need to get back to engineering because people won't view me as technical anymore and all that stuff. And I turned it down, and then he came back to me and pretty much said like, Orville, I don't think you understand what I'm asking you. This is a rare opportunity. And if you don't want it, like I'll give it to somebody else, but I strongly advise you take it. And as a result of taking that role, I got so much exposure that really set me up for how the executives work. How do we sell products? How do you reorganize a team? What does the people organization do day in, day out? What does legal do day in, day out? Like, I got such a breadth of exposure that by far exceeded any type of technical role I could have taken. So a bit of a long answer, but I would say, always thinking a few steps ahead. And the risk of being overly tied to your identity is you might be given the opportunity of a lifetime and actually end up turning it down because you're too tied to the identity of your past.
I love that. Taurean, I can ask you this question. One of the things I appreciate about designers is they're not tied to a particular thing. They're tied to the delight of the person they're building the product for. I've sat in these designer reviews like, hey, there's option A, here's option B, and option C. And you could watch them go really wholeheartedly on each of them with the pros and cons of each. And they'll look at the data and they'll say, we can go this way. But one of the things that's so beautiful is that they're just open to change. Could you walk us through that? That's a mindset we need right now in the terms of AI and identity shift, being open to different alternatives to Orville's path. I'm curious, how do designers stay loosely coupled as opposed to this has to be the way? Because flexibility is a huge asset here.
There was definitely a rigidness of, well, this is my lane. I'm the design guy. Or woman, and I deliver these experiences end to end. And I would almost equate it to being like a baton, like a relay race. Like, okay, now you go do your part. And right now you're having this moment where you can go very broad. And so you're in essence if the company doesn't have it, you can do the product management work. And if the company doesn't have it, you can do some of the front-end engineering. And I would say that some people are embracing that wholeheartedly, and they're having outsized impact in the companies by saying, oh, I didn't know I could do all this before. And they're running the table end to end. But I do think that there are some who are holding on to the old lane. This is the craft and this is what I do. And I think it's don't let go of that, but also don't push away from the growth. And for you to be able to wear these multiple hats, and to Orville's point, you might find yourself in a place where, wow, I didn't even know I loved to do this, right? I didn't even know I love to do the business acumen part of this and mapping this to the business, or I didn't know I loved the art of creating a PR and shipping something for a code review. I didn't know that I would actually love this, right? And actually have full control of that. So I think it's growing pains. And I would say it's disconcerting for some people, but it's also bringing life to others. And then one other thing I will mention is AI is also causing parts of our workflows to be automated. So if you look at the software development lifecycle, I mean, they literally have agents right now that are doing code reviews. And I talked to some engineers and I was like, are you okay with this? And they're like, oh, they can have it. They were literally like, they can have the code review. And I was like, wow, because code review was so ingrained in software development culture, and there was identity there, but it also shows you how a lot of engineers are okay with the fluctuation of their identity and giving something to the machine. I think that will also come with design. Whatever happens if you don't have design reviews, or you have less of them and the machines are doing some of the design reviews. I think that's a little bit of identity and shifting and change, and you have to make room for that. It's exciting, but I think for some people it's a little terrifying, but I also feel that the impact for those who embrace it will be 10x.
Sarah, so what does healthy identity reconstruction actually look like? We go on LinkedIn, and pretty much LinkedIn is an echo chamber. It's definitely not in the sense of, wow, I can get really objective feedback from the folks at LinkedIn. Curious, how do you think about healthy identity reconstruction in a time of change?
For me, when you ask about identity, it takes me to my coaching mindset, and it goes back to the basics. If you hang too much, we are all for people who have identities that are very multifaceted, whether that's as individuals, as members of different communities, where our families come from, what companies we've been a part of, what disciplines we've been a part of. If you hang too much on your identity because of someone telling you what it is or what it should be, versus creating that identity yourself and actually forging that identity with curiosity, with agility, with balance. That to me is some of the fundamentals that also will guide you through this phase. Identity is always shifting if you are a person of identity. Throughout your whole life, if you remain curious, open-minded, have a learner's mindset, and actually lean into accomplishing new perspectives on your identity, you can ride that shift. So that's the first thing, is lean into that element of curiosity and learner's mindset of this shift for your identity. The second piece of identity goes back to what Taurean said, which is if you fixate on one part of your identity as a designer, as opposed to this is where the work is moving to, get very curious and clear on what elements of the discipline are truly moving, and actually experiment your way with safety, with taking the perspectives of a cross-discipline view like we are here in this discussion, you will thrive. And so I believe that taking that view of being a builder, which is what AI is allowing you to do, being an expert in something new, which is what AI is allowing you to do, that is where the identity shift comes in. Be a surfer. Understand what's happening in the tool, understand what shift or surf is coming out new for you in your function, and frankly, what it means across functions. Because no matter where you're talking about applying AI or what tool you're applying, at the end of the day, it is about finding the use cases that are going to create customer value, are going to actually create value for the company, and create value for you in your own discipline. And everything else will get washed out in the surf. And so that is where AI and the conversation is right now in the industry, is getting rid of those useless intents and getting down to cross-functional intents that truly create the right products and outcomes for the company. So I would say get with that and pin your identity to that motion and how you can be a part of it.
Beautifully put. Beautifully put. Thank you, Sarah. As we wrap up here, all would love to ask just one question as we close out the thoughts and set up our next conversation. What's the one idea you want most folks to take away from this conversation when it comes to looking at identity in a world of AI? What do you want people to walk away with? Orville, I'll start with you.
I would say just embrace the change. There's a lot of scary stories out there. The world's going to come to an end. We're all going to be on universal basic income and all this stuff. Just embrace the change and really think through the issues for yourself. I'd say a lot of the scary headlines, if you dig a little deeper, people are selling their book, so they have an angle. So just think about what's best for you as an individual and embrace the change.
I would say something similar of embracing the change, not being afraid to wear multiple hats or try new things. Almost anything is possible when the execution barriers are low and you can deliver amazing outputs for the company, or even if you want to go build something for yourself. And so just owning it end to end, and I think magic can happen. And again, to Orville's point, not being afraid, because there's so much change, but I think there's so much opportunity.
Beautifully put. Sarah.
I'll take a page out of what I'm seeing come from Europe in AI adoption, which is be really responsible. Think about what's happening for humanity as you adopt and you shift with AI. And so responsible, sort of guardrail, protected space to actually, and human space to adopt AI is the path that I think is most important right now. But the second thing I would say is be a builder. Just get in it, be curious, be vulnerable about what you don't know, learn from others, and be a builder.
That is awesome. Thank you all so much for these perspectives. Folks, thank you so much for listening. We spent this episode talking about the individual and what's happening to people and the evolving impact of AI. And in our next episode, we're going to go up a level. And so we're going to talk about organizations themselves and how companies are making these bets and how they can empower their people to take these leaps with courage and focus. And so if you are a decision maker wondering about how to manage this seismic shift, that episode is for you. We're going to be posting this on LinkedIn and YouTube. So if you have questions or areas you would like us to cover, please drop them in the comments. And if today's conversation gave you something to think about, please subscribe and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. You'll be joining other legends who are rewriting what's possible. Thank you everyone for the time. And always remember, every ending holds the blueprint to a new beginning. We will see you next time. Bye, everyone.